So I get a lot of comments lately about people who want to move out to Southeast Asia, and they say, what is the cheapest country to start up in Southeast Asia? And I'm not talking about vacationing or backpacking for 2 weeks. I mean renting a place, setting up the internet, transportation, visas, food, healthcare, and building a real life. And today I'm going to personally compare the three countries that I have lived in, being the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. Now, this isn't based on Reddit fantasies of live on $400 a month in Southeast Asia. This is real world startup cost reality. And honestly, after I kind of looked at it and kind of put it down to paper, I was actually a little surprised myself. Anyway, that will be today's discussion. Stick around.
Same four walls, same fading year. Got these plans stuck in my head. Southeast Asia calling me instead. Bangkok nights and Bali shores. Sick of dreaming, want something more. Pack your bags, don't
All right, so first, what do I mean by startup cost? Because a lot of people confuse startup cost with a cheap vacation versus cheap relocation. And those are very different things. So startup costs are going to include things like apartment deposits, first month rent, visa expenses, transportation, buying household goods, SIM card, internet, food, maybe a scooter, and emergency buffer money. Basically, the way I look at it is to land in a country and survive the first 60 or 90 days comfortably. That's the real question. So, starting off, third place for me actually is Thailand, and I'll explain further why. Even though Thailand, on a month-to-month basis, is actually less expensive than the Philippines for me. But I'll explain my reasoning behind this answer. And still, in my opinion, out of all three, I still feel like Thailand is the best option for everyone. But let me explain further. The infrastructure is incredible. The food is amazing. Healthcare is world class. Transportation is easy. And Bangkok, in a lot of ways, feels more developed than many Western cities. But Thailand is no longer the ultra cheap destination that it once was 15 years ago. Especially if you want modern condos, which you'll see when I move into my new condo. It's going to be much more modern, but it's going to be a lot more expensive. And I'll show you that. That'll be around the beginning of August. But if you want close and easy accessible access to the BTS, good neighborhoods, air conditioning, which is pretty standard, and Western comforts, then the Bangkok prices can climb pretty fast. Now, for Thailand's startup reality, if you arrive in Bangkok and you want a decent condo, 2-month deposit plus first month rent, and in the Philippines and Vietnam, I was able to barter out of that 2-month deposit often, but in Thailand, it's very, very difficult to do that. I haven't been able to do that. I don't know anyone else that's been able to do that. If you've been able to do that, great, but it's not too common. But you'll need basic setup, you need transportation, visa expenses, and an emergency cushion. You always should have that emergency cushion. Too many people come and they don't have an emergency cushion. And if something happens, boom, they're like homeless on the streets or begging for money to try to get back home. So in my opinion, for Thailand, the minimum that you should arrive with is at least 3,000 to 5,000. Could it be cheaper? Yes. But that's just the money you need to arrive. The visa, if you're going to do a retirement visa, you're going to need 800,000 in the bank. You're going to have to pay for visa fees if you use an agent or not. All of that adds up. But I think a lot of people underestimate immigration costs, with the visas, maybe tourist visa runs if you want to play that game, which is probably not a great thing to do at this point in time in Thailand. Condo deposits, healthcare, and nightlife temptation. Let me tell you, Bangkok and many other cities here in Thailand will tempt you to go out and spend money. I mean, if you're a guy and you're walking around and you see massages all over, you have the Soy Cowboy and Nana Plaza, all these places are going to tempt to take that money from your wallet, trust me. And Thailand is very easy to spend money in, and that is the problem. Thailand, you can live way down here, but you almost got to shelter yourself from that stuff because Thailand can go from here to here very quickly. You know, most people for the Thailand visa cost, most people start off with the Thailand tourist route and they use the visa exemption, tourist visa, education visa, the retirement visa, the DTV visa, or they do border runs. And again, not too good to do those anymore. And that can add up pretty fast if you're doing it that route. Typical yearly tourist living costs definitely should include that. And that's extensions, visa runs, flights, transportation, immigration fees. And honestly, many people easily spend $800 to $2,000 per year just staying legal through tourist methods. And then, of course, there's always the uncertainty. But the Thailand retirement visa is probably the best option, honestly, if you're 50 and over. Thailand becomes much more stable if you qualify for the retirement visa. Age 50 and up, 800,000 Thai baht in the bank, and or possibly the 65,000 baht per month requirements. Not all countries can do that, or at least not on your first year. But again, your costs are going to be visa agents, immigration, re-entry permits, bank account setup, annual renewals, and realistically, again, you're spending anywhere from $700 to $2,000 plus startup costs initially, depending on whether you use an agent or not. But after you've had that all set up, then life becomes a lot easier. You no longer have to do the visa. You no longer have to set up the bank. You don't have to pay the agent because you can just do the renewals. And that's probably why so many expats eventually settle into this method and stay long-term in Thailand. But Thailand, for me, gives you something important, which is worth the extra cost than the other two countries. That is stability, things work, the trains work, the malls work, the hospitals work, delivery apps work, infrastructure works. And sometimes paying a little more for a little less stress is worth it. Another thing a lot of people ask me about when moving abroad is, how do I meet a nice Asian girl? And honestly, this can be one of the hardest parts about starting over in another country. One app I recommend is AsianWives.com. What I like about it is you can meet women from all over Asia, not just one country. Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, and many other countries. So if you're someone considering relocating or even just exploring Southeast Asia, it can be a very good way to connect before you've even arrived. Just remember, take your time, use common sense, and don't rush anything. But for people interested in dating internationally, especially here in Southeast Asia, or building relationships in Asia, it's definitely worth checking out. I will leave the link in the description and also the pinned comment. Okay, so second place for me would be the Philippines. And I think a lot of people automatically think that the Philippines is actually the cheapest, but it really isn't. But Philippines does win on some fronts, and I'll explain that. But again, the startup costs can sneak up on you pretty hard in the Philippines, especially because the Philippines is fragmented geographically. A lot of people don't think about that. You got flights between islands, you got ferry boat rides, transportation, import costs, Western groceries, the power costs, the electric is actually quite high in the Philippines. Condo electricity definitely adds up. Now, the Philippines' advantage, well, the biggest advantage is English, and it matters way more than I think some people realize. When you first move abroad, you're a little bit stressed already. Culture shock, I think, is real. Paperwork sometimes can become a little bit exhausting. And being able to communicate definitely saves on time, money, and frustration. And that alone lowers startup friction immediately. And honestly, the friendliness of the Filipinos helps too. So realistic for Philippine startup, I'd say $2,500 to $4,000 is a safer, realistic startup number, especially if you want a comfortable condo, which you're going to have to do in probably one of the expat bubbles, air conditioning, modern area, emergency buffer. And I think, honestly, a lot of people arrive underfunded in the Philippines. Now, Philippines visa costs. Now, Here's one of the positives on the Philippines. If you are under 50, even if you're over 50, if you want to just live in the Philippines on a tourist visa, you pretty much can stay on a tourist visa for up to 3 years without ever leaving the country. Then you'll have to leave, you come back in, and the whole visa process starts over again. This will cost you approximately $500 a year. That's with your extensions, ACR card, and if you leave, you got a exit clearance and a fee. But honestly, that's not bad for someone who doesn't even have to get on a proper visa. But compared to Thailand and Vietnam, this is where the Philippines again shines. Another thing is if you were ex-military, then the SRRV, the retirement visa for the ex-military, is a bargain that you will not find anywhere else. I don't know. I'd be hard-pressed to find something like that in the world, but maybe Cambodia. But $1,500 deposit, it'll cost you about $1,000 to get that thing started as well. And then you have $10 renewals for a retirement visa. And that's, again, only if you were ex-military. And it doesn't just have to be the US. It could be Italy, it could be Germany, it could be Australia, the UK. But you can stay long-term in the Philippines by just doing extensions up to 3 years without ever having to do any kind of border runs. But again, it'll cost you around $500. Now, if you want a visa agent to do the extensions and everything for you, then it can cost you anywhere from $500 to $1,200 a year, depending on the visa agency. And I think still often cheaper and less stressful than doing it like in Thailand, where very uncertain if you could even get back in the country after a third visa run. But again, even if you're not ex-military, the Philippines offers retirement visas. I don't think they are as good as Thailand. And the problem is that the requirements and the deposits have changed within the last few years. And it can vary depending on your age and your pension status. But your costs are going to include application fees, deposit requirements, medical checkups. But generally speaking, their retirement visa, if using an agent, will not be a difficult thing to do. The agent will pretty much walk you all the way through it. All right, and then that leaves Vietnam. Now, Vietnam actually is the first place winner in this. And there's a lot of pros, but there's a lot of negatives, which I'll get into here. If we're talking purely on startup costs, I think Vietnam wins, especially Da Nang, parts of Ho Chi Minh City, parts of Hanoi, and Dalat, which is one of my favorite cities, higher elevation, cooler weather. And food prices, honestly, are hard to beat anywhere in Asia. You can eat incredibly well for very little money. Coffee, cheap. Local food, cheap. Apartments, often cheaper than Thailand and the Philippines. Transportation, extremely cheap as well. Electric, internet, cell phone, all of that, very inexpensive. And I would say that Vietnam feels like value. That's kind of the best word that I can describe Vietnam. You get a lot for your money. Modern apartments, fast internet, amazing food culture, great cafes, and rapidly improving infrastructure. It has grown leaps and bounds from the time that I lived there in 2019. It's just grown leaps and bounds. It's amazing. But Vietnam has some trade-offs too. And the downside for me, and this is what happened to me in 2019, after 7 months in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam can feel harder initially for foreigners. English is less common than the Philippines and also here in Bangkok. So the language barrier is bigger. Crossing streets feels like a video game sometimes. And the bureaucracy can also be a little bit confusing. So while Vietnam may be cheaper financially, it can feel a little bit mentally exhausting at first. Now, the Vietnam visa costs, here's the issue. They don't really have any kind of visas for you other than a 90-day tourist visa that you can purchase. Now, Vietnam used to be extremely easy for long-term tourists, but things have changed. And now most foreigners rely on e-visas, border runs, visa agents, and that's every 90 days, which is kind of a pain. And the rules can change unexpectedly, and I believe they are changing in the future, but we'll have to see what happens. And the uncertainty that you could be on a year lease and be doing these 90-day border runs, and they could change their visa rules, and all of a sudden you can't get back in. Or maybe you can get back in, and then you're on a year lease, and that's your last 90 days that you can do. I mean, it's just too uncertain. Whereas the Philippines really, the 10 years that I was there, never changed their tourist visa. Never. Could stay up to 3 years, no problem. In Thailand, the retirement visa really hasn't changed. Their tourist visa has. Now, the visa costs themselves are not expensive. They may not seem terrible, but constant exits, flights, or maybe using an agent to do a bus border run can add up, be a little bit stressful, a little bit expensive, time consuming. And for Vietnam, again, the retirement visa, that is the big issue. It doesn't truly have a retirement visa like Thailand or the Philippines. And I feel like that's one of the reasons most people don't stay long-term in Vietnam. It's more of like, okay, maybe I'll do border runs, maybe I'll stay a year, maybe I'll stay 2, but nobody really stays long-term. Like the Philippines, you'll meet expats that have been there for years and years. Me, for example. Thailand, you meet people who've lived here 20 years on retirement visas, no problem. But Vietnam, you rarely run across that unless they're married to a Vietnamese lady. So honestly, I think somebody could start comfortably in Vietnam around $2,000 to $3,000, especially if they're disciplined. And maybe even less if they've already got experience living abroad. And I think that's where Vietnam really stands out. So which country would I choose personally? Well, I think it's obvious. I'm here living in Thailand. And again, I think startup costs initially are probably the highest out of those 3 countries, but for me, it's worth it. I think the quality of life and the infrastructure matter the most to me, and that's why I chose Thailand. Philippines is great for easy visa, especially if you're ex-military or you're under 50 and you just want to do a tourist visa and you want the English and even the dating. Can't beat the Philippines. So if you want ease of transition and language matters most to you, then the Philippines is going to be a good choice. If you want the bare bones cheapest, Vietnam is going to be the best for you. And I think the biggest mistake that people make is they focus only on the rent. They say, okay, well, in Vietnam, I can get a place for $300. Well, in the Philippines, I can get a place for $400. Thailand, I can get one for $500. And they base it off of the rent alone. That's the trap. And the real question is, how much stress can you handle when starting over? Because sometimes paying a little more for easier living is absolutely worth it. And other times you may want maximum value for your money. And again, that's where Vietnam shines. So my final thoughts after living in all 3 countries, I think honestly, Southeast Asia still offers some of the best opportunities for living abroad for foreigners. Always come with extra savings, emergency money, flexibility, because moving abroad can be amazing, but it's still real life. So again, for me personally, Vietnam is the cheapest, best infrastructure Thailand, easiest transition for Westerners, the Philippines. But I'm curious what you guys think. Comment down below and let me know. And if you had to start over tomorrow, which country would you choose? And I will see everyone in the next video.
Got these
Ciao.
plans stuck in my head. Southeast Asia calling me instead. Bangkok nights and Bali shores. Sick of dreaming, want something more. Pack your bags, don't hesitate. Gio, let's go before it's too late. Time keeps slipping away from us. Keep living.